I love a full house. Good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Westcombe-Cote. I'm a member of the FEVA committee for my sins. Sometimes it's absolutely brilliant, sometimes like Rowena, I'm tearing what's left of my hair out. It is so nice to see everybody here this evening. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be, can you say free-range authors let loose? Perhaps not, I don't think so. Yes, we can. What we have here are three gentlemen who enjoy ghost stories, writing ghost stories, reading ghost stories, performing ghost stories. Looking at this table, there are certainly three actors here, possibly 3.5, I'm not entirely sure. And it's a question, I think, of bringing your imagination to the event and letting these gentlemen take you to various places perhaps you never thought you'd go. What I'd like to do, very, very quickly, is to introduce them. They can tell them more about themselves afterwards. I have to put it on a piece of paper these days because when you get to my age, things drop out the other side of the brain. We have Paul in the corner, Paul Forster. In the middle, Daniel Ingram-Brown. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Mark Wells, I've got in the wrong order. Mark Wells in the middle here, and Dan Ingram-Brown immediately on my right. Two local authors. Mark has come all the way from Cambridge especially. It's also interesting to see that people came yesterday to Knaresborough from Bognor Regis. The lady who won the town prize competition came all the way from Bognor Regis. So yes, the ladies won it. I'd also like to say thank you to my colleagues and friends from Books and Beverages who are here tonight. Edwin's helping with the recording. We have Kate and David. And they are, I hope, going to go back and tell the rest of our friends in Harrogate and the area about what wonderful people we have here and get them back for another session. So that is enough from me. I shall sit quietly in the corner and try and make myself as small as possible. And what I'd like, gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind, perhaps to give you, the audience, our friends here, a brief introduction about how you got into the job of writing and where you're taking it, with the special topic of ghost stories, or as horrible, most horrible. Anybody know where the quote comes from?
Yes, from Hamlet.
Thank you, excellent. Well done. Gentlemen, take it away.
Me? Okay. Hello. So, do we need this? No. Shall we?
Can people hear okay?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Well, good, because I run the Harrogate Ghost Walk. So, so hopefully you can hear me. So yeah, my name's Paul. I got into writing this book, Haunted Harrogate, through running the Harrogate Ghost Walk, which I started putting together just before lockdown happened, if you all remember that. What a great time to start a ghost walk. But it led me to writing the book. So what I did over lockdown was interview loads of people who believed they'd experienced something paranormal. And what I put together was a collection of stories, both from people in Harrogate, Knaresborough and surrounding areas. And that kind of fed into the ghost walk as well. So that briefly summarises how I came to write this book. So I don't want to take too much time as we each introduce that bit.
So Mark Wells, I've been a writer now for about 10 years, and my introduction to writing in Cambridge, which is all my stories are set in Cambridge. My introduction to that came when I was just finishing as the bursar of one of the colleges, and there's a big tradition in Cambridge about ghost storytelling, because one of the most famous ghost writers is M.R. James, Montague Rhodes James. And M.R. James, he was a fellow at King's College. He was the provost of King's College, which is a bit like the master. And he wrote about 200 books on medieval history. But he was fascinated by ghosts. And at King's College, there is the story of this ghost in a big building just by the big chapel, King's College Chapel. There's a building called the Gibbs Building. And there's a ghost that is said to be there, which was a professor called Barrett, who slept in a coffin Okay, as fellows do in Cambridge. And he slept in a coffin, and one morning there was screaming heard from his room, and his bedder, the lady who cleaned his room, went in there and found him dead in his coffin. And this is about the time, about the sort of 1880s, and I think that might have influenced M.R. James, because a couple of Christmases later in 1897, he actually read a ghost story that he had written for the fellows that were staying up over Christmas in college. And he read it in the fellows combination room, and it went down a storm. And then after that, he just wrote a story every year for each fellows Christmas gathering, and eventually published them as his first collection, and went on to do 4 collections of books. Well, there's a professor at St John's College, my college, called Pat Boyd, and Pat started that same tradition. He started about 30 years ago hosting a ghost story evening in St John's College just before Christmas. And 10 years ago, he asked me to write a ghost story for that. And the ghost story evening is set in this long wood-panelled room, which is only lit by candles. There's no electricity in the room, 2 roaring fires, and we cram in about 110 students and fellows who are staying over Christmas, each Christmas, and we read them 4 ghost stories.
That's nice.
And I was asked if I would be interested in writing one, and I wrote one, and Pat asked me to perform it. So I performed my first ghost story, which I'm going to read an excerpt from you tonight, 10 years ago. And ever since then, I've written one every Christmas for that event, and I'm putting up a collection which I'm going to publish. And you can download it for free tonight. It's an ebook. You can download it for free tonight. And if you've got on your seats, you've got a little card with Cambridge Gothic. On the back of that's my website. Just go on there, click the button, and you'll see you can download this story and the others as well. That's how I got into ghost story writing.
So I'm feeling a bit of imposter syndrome because I don't feel like I write ghost stories. I write fantasy fiction, but ghosts keep turning up in my stories. And so I think there's a sort of a ghostly sense that comes out of my writing. I think I see it as a thing like bubbling up from the subconscious somehow. So I have got quite a lot of ghost stories, but I feel like I don't necessarily set out to write ghost stories. So my last published book is called Bees Witch, a ghostly coming of age story, and is set here in Knaresborough. And then the next book that I'm writing is called The Ghosts of the House of Time. And I'm also doing some short stories at the moment where I'm visiting places connected to folklore around Britain, and I'm writing something in response to each of those places. And a lot of those are turning out to be ghost stories as well.
So you're not an imposter.
There you go. I think all writers feel that though, to an extent. Yeah, so I think I maybe look at the writing ghost stories as something about the act of writing itself is a sort of ghostly act where things come out of the subconscious and you're never quite sure what's going to emerge.
I find characters are very disobedient.
Yeah, they are, and plots.
So I think we've set the scene. I think we ask our authors to read a little bit from their works. Get us moving.
Okay, we'll just keep going in this order then. So quite aptly, I've chosen short story from Knaresborough. Which one should I do? I'm going to do this one because there's been a bit of follow-up, and I love a bit of follow-up. So when I do the Harrogate Ghost Walk, I'll tell a story, and quite often someone will come up to me afterwards as we're walking to the next location and go, I used to work in that building and I experienced this. So there might be a second book, because you just keep hearing new stories, which is great. But this one is set in Knaresborough Fruit and Veg, and it is the fruit and veg shop in Knaresborough. Does anyone know it? Yeah, it's just in the marketplace. The shop on Silver Street, whose name aptly fits the products they sell, is not haunted. The flat above, however, is said to be home to a couple of ghosts. A family were living in the flat, and all was well, until one morning, when their younger son came to breakfast. I'm tired, he complained. Eat your breakfast, said his mum, Sarah. But the old ladies kept me up last night, he said, with a mouth full of cereal. His mum and dad looked at each other and shrugged it off. It's just a dream, lad, now finish up, said his dad. Now the same thing happened every now and again, with the young boy complaining of 2 old ladies coming into his room at night. "Well, they do look kind," he said to his mum, as she listened to him again one morning. "They don't do anything. They just come in and they look." Months passed, and the family moved out for various reasons. They rented the flat to another family and forgot all about the two old ladies. That was until two families bumped into each other again. "Hello," said Sarah, "how's the flat? Have you settled in now?" Susan replied, "Yeah, it's nice enough, but my little daughter isn't getting much sleep. She keeps complaining of two ladies coming into her room at night. Now, she says they're not scary. In fact, they look quite kind. I'm not sure what's going on, but some of the door handles, well, they keep moving on their own as well. But no one's ever behind the door. They just kind of move on their own." Sarah had never told anyone about what her younger son had seen in his bedroom, or about her own experience of moving door handles. But you can likely bet that the two old ladies are still haunting the flat today. And they are. So that's just a very quick, short story. Again, it's a true story. What I love about my Ghost Walk and the book is these are all first-hand accounts from people who have experienced that story. Brilliant. So the lady who told me that story used to live in that flat, and it's very short because she's like, that's all that happened. So I haven't embellished it, haven't added to it. I've tried to take her words and turn them into a kind of factual story with a bit of character as well. So the names have all been changed. But the boy's dad was there as well, and he said lad a lot. He said, "Oh yeah, my lad thinks he's seen stuff." And so that, the lad came out of that, sound very Yorkshire as well. So trying to put a bit of character in that I experienced when talking to them. And a bit of follow-up. So I've been working in Knaresborough for the past 2 years, and went into the fruit and veg shop to ask if you could put a poster up for an event. And whilst I was there, I said, do you know about the flat upstairs? He said, "Well, it's not for rent, there's a family living there." I was like, "No, yeah, but do you know the history of it?" And I said, "Well, I run the Harrogate Ghost Walk, and I've actually got a book," always plugging the book. £9.99 Waterstones. But you can get it off me tonight for £10 because I'll sign it. I'll put a signature in, that's worth a penny. So I've written a book, it's in Castlegate Books, plug. It's called Haunted Harrogate. "Oh, right, yeah, it is haunted upstairs. It's two old ladies." He said, "There's a new family in there now, and one more now setting up, and the family came out, and her little girl was like chatting with him and saying, 'Oh, I've seen two ladies.' And he was like, 'Oh, yeah, the two ladies who live upstairs.' So they're still there. That was about maybe less than a year ago now that I heard that. So these two old ladies are still haunting that building. And that's what I love about ghost stories. I don't feel like they end, like M.R. James, you've kept that tradition going now. And I've used some of his stories, because you mentioned performance. I perform Victorian seances as well. So I trained as an actor, work as a magician and mind reader. So I do lots of corporate events and weddings, not seances, that's a bit weird. I just do that kind of corporate or Halloween, not for weddings. Yeah, in that bit where they go,
people on the
it's
guest
really
list.
sad that our grandparents can't be here today. Well, they can. She says, "Congratulations." So I do all these performances. And I will demonstrate something tonight, because before you guys read a piece of yours, I'll come back to it. I have worked in the museum sector for many, many years as a project manager, designing visitor experiences for museums. So taking an object, like a book, and telling its story, and reinventing it and telling it in a different way. So that's kind of where my love for storytelling comes from, through my actor training. And we were both talking, we both did Andram as a kid. So I've always been on the stage. And this is just another way of kind of telling a story. But with the objects, I collect haunted objects. They're called hauntiques. Isn't that great? It's true, this is great. I was working in, sorry to keep, I'm whittering on. I was working in, do you know the Titanic Museum in Liverpool? Oh, yeah. And we're curating just a cabinet of books. And one of the curators, we were going through all the books that were available, and the curator said, "Oh, we can't put this one up because it's haunted." I was like, "Shut up." He's like, "Yeah, it's a hauntique." And I was like, "Oh, that's a brilliant word." He said, "Do you want to see some more?" So he took me into this white room, and white gloves were put on, and opened a box, and there was loads of haunted objects. So there were bells and books and dolls. And he said, yeah, all of these things we can't put on display because stuff happens. I was like, that's rubbish. And this was years ago, before I started the Ghost Walk or anything like that. I didn't believe in ghosts then. And he told me how this book would be in a display cabinet, and these display cabinets are temperature controlled and everything, light controlled. None of the night, the lights go off, and the pages are held over with these little tiny pins, quite firm though. But they'd come in the next morning, and it'd turn to the next page. And they were like, and there's no cameras, and we were like, set one up, you should set one up, and they never did. But it would turn to another page, and they couldn't account for how this was happening. So when they turned it back, and eventually they just had the book closed, and then the cabinet lights started to flicker. And I was like, oh, what's this book? The book's haunted. So the museum staff kind of came up with this theory that the book was haunted and it was taken out of display, and when it was, the cabinet was fine again. So they're like, wait, it's a hauntique. So I've spent a lot of my mortgage money buying these haunted antiques from auctions and other museums that are kind of closing down. So, and I brought two bells with me. And if you have a look at the table at the back, I've got a few other of my haunted objects, Cottonley Fairy photographs, and some spirit photography as well you can have a look at. So that's my first story, and that's just a little bit more information about me. There you go.
Brilliant. So can I just check, has anyone here seen a ghost?
Well, sort of, I've heard.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you say, do people believe in ghosts or not? I mean, so many people I've met when I do these ghost stories who say, I've seen a ghost. In fact, one person I know in the room who's seen a ghost is my wife, Karina, who's sitting amongst you. She's alive, by the way. And so when we started dating, I was a student at Cambridge, and on my staircase, so we dated my final year, and Karina was working as a waitress, and after her shift, she would come up to my room. And my room was on one of these classic Cambridge, like twisty, turreted staircases. And there was a rumour that there was a ghost at the top of this staircase. And it was often seen by waiters and waitresses because the college kitchens are at the bottom of the staircase. And so this staircase has, this ghost appears on a regular basis at the top of the staircase. And he is in a sort of like a 19th century bedrobe, sort of like a vest, a sort of a bed vest. And he's got his feet in a bucket of straw, and he's reading a book. And if you see him, or when he's been seen up there, he will just continue to read the book, and occasionally he'll just get up, step out of the bucket of straw, and walk down the stairs through you. That's the way it works. And he is believed to be an impoverished student from Lancashire called James Wood. And James Wood was the son of a weaver. And the college, St John's College, was founded by Lady Margaret Beaufort, who was from the House of Lancaster. And so part of the college statute is that they should encourage people who are capable of great scientific or sort of works of art or whatever to come to St John's College and be educated. Anyway, James was spotted by his local vicar as being very good at maths, and he got a scholarship to St John's College, and he came down. But he was so poor that he couldn't afford to actually light the candles in his room at night, because you had to pay for your candles. So he used to sit at the top of this staircase, because the college used to light the staircase with candles, so that the fellows wouldn't fall down the stairs. And he was allegedly found sitting at the top of the stairs, reading his book by candlelight. Anyway, he did really well. If you get the top grade in mathematics in your final year at Cambridge, you're called the senior wrangler. Okay, so if someone says that's the senior wrangler, you think, ooh, he's got the top grade in mathematics. And he got the top grade in his year, and he actually went on to become the master of college. And there's a fantastic statue, marble statue of him in the college chapel. So whenever I'm showing people on my sort of like ghost walk around the college or whatever, I point to the staircase, that's James Wood, and I take him to the chapel and I say, and here he is in marble. And he looks very ghostly in his white marble, sitting there, and he's got a book on his, but there's no bucket of straw. It's just, and they drew the line at that anyway. So my first, I've never met him, but but I had a room on that staircase, and Karina saw him at the top of the stairs. So it's one of those things that I was really intrigued by, these ghosts, and I started, you know, obviously when I started doing these ghost stories for Pat Boyd, I started researching where the ghosts were in Cambridge, and there are so many. So my stories are, I wouldn't say they're all set in real locations, and it's very much a sort of M.R. James tradition, which is the M.R. James, typically an M.R. James story will have an English character, typically from a university or for some sort of institution. They will be in a very traditional setting. You know, it might be a university setting, or it might be a country house or whatever, and there's normally an artifact that is the catalyst for the apparition, and those are the sort of three core elements. And he always used to say he tries to build those three elements in his ghost story. So when Pat asked me to write my first ghost story, which I'll read to you now, that actually was the idea I had. I try and do those three things, and quite frankly I've stuck with that sort of formula ever since. There's always been something involving a character from, or somebody that might have been in Cambridge, and it's normally in a traditional setting, and there's normally something like an artifact that sort of gets it going. And this particular one is called Come Out to Play, and Come Out to Play is sort of follows that sort of like theme. I won't read it all because it's about 20 minutes long, but I'll read you the sort of the opening, and you can get a sense of it. Come Out to Play. Ying thought Cambridge winters would be the death of her. Walking back from lectures, she tucked her chin into her college scarf as the wind whistled down King's Parade. Using a group of students as a windbreak, she found herself listening to their Christmas holiday plans. Lucky them, she thought. Ying wasn't flying home to Hong Kong at the end of term. She'd be spending the festive season with her aunt and uncle in London. They were kind enough, but this year she planned on staying in college for as long as possible, right through to Christmas Eve if she could manage it. Being so far behind with her reading list, she could do with some serious time in the library. Hey, Ying! Turning, she recognised the heavy-set boy with the matching scarf who was crossing the road to join her. Trevor was from the north of England, so being a long way from home was something they had in common. They'd met in Freshers' Week and had hit it off straight away. Hi, you, she said. So, how's it going? He fell in step beside her. Ying grimaced. Just had 3 lectures. Me too. Ying gave him a weak smile. Why was he always so cheery? Then she remembered. Trevor was studying English. His holiday reading would be something like Dickens or Tolkien rather than boring economics. She cast him an envious look and found that he was studying her. He said, sounding like a doctor examining his patient. You know what? I think it's time for some retail therapy. What? She protested. No, Trevor, I need to get back. Ying, trust me. The therapy I'm thinking of is just around the corner. It's where I go whenever I've had enough of Chaucer's tales or Milton has finally lost me. Reluctantly, Ying let herself be led into a narrow lane opposite King's, where they squeezed between the tall buildings before turning left in front of an old church. Ahead of them was the scruffy but welcoming frontage of an antiquarian bookshop. Its uneven windows were obscured by books stacked from floor to ceiling. Even more were piled high on wooden racks outside. Welcome to G. David Bookseller, said Trevor, smiling. As an overworked first year, Ying, this place might just possibly save your life. It was only later she would discover how wrong Trevor was. For the next hour, all thoughts of supervisions and essays were forgotten as Ying lost herself in David's. It was a real Aladdin's cave. She puzzled over the covers of titles she had never read and traced her fingers along the spines of old friends. In the end, she chose To Kill a Mockingbird, a book she had always been meaning to read but had somehow never managed to. Trevor was waiting for her at the checkout. Well, he said. She showed him the book. Ah, Harper Lee, a lady after my own heart. What did you get, she asked. Songbook. I didn't know you sang. I don't, he said, stepping aside and showing her a little leather book, so small it could fit comfortably in the palm of his hand. Ying read the faded print on the cover. Tommy Thumb's Pretty Songbook. What's that then? Nursery rhymes, he said. You know, sort of thing your mum and dad used to sing to you at bedtime. Not my mum and dad, said Ying. Trevor opened the book and showed her a page with a woodcut of children playing outside a house. Know this one, he said, and began to sing. Girls and boys come out to play, the moon does shine as bright as day. Come with a whoop, come with a call, come with a goodwill or not at all. No, said Ying when he finished. I can honestly say I never heard my parents sing that one. Did yours? But Trevor wasn't listening. He was staring down the alleyway towards the church, his head cocked to one side and a blank expression on his face. Trevor, she said, giving him a nudge. What? He said, startled. Are you all right? Only you seemed to zone out on me just then. Sorry, he said, focusing back on her. Lost in her thoughts. Fancy some lunch? If we hurry, the buttery should still be open. Is it that time already? I've got ultimate frisbee this afternoon. Then we better get a move on, he said with a grin, slipping the little book into his coat pocket. They headed back towards King's Parade. As they did so, Trevor began to whistle the rhyme again, the air frosting in front of his lips.
I love that. I do love the whole thing of like the lost artifact, the old artifact that's rediscovered. I've got a choice. I'm not sure what to read. I've got something from Bee's Witch, which is set here in Knaresborough, but a few of you have already heard some of it. Or I've got a new story that I wrote last week, and it's not fully edited, so you can give me feedback and say whether it's good or bad or what I could improve. I think I might do the new story, even though it's not Knaresborough. So for my wife bought me a map of places to do with folklore and superstition. And on this map, there's a tour of 50 different places that you can visit. There's loads of stuff on it, but it's got a tour of 50 different places. And I just turned 50. So I thought for my 50th birthday, I would try and visit all of these 50 places and write something in response to each of them. I'm up to the 15th place, which is the one that I'm going to read to you. So this was from just about a week and a few days ago, up in Aberdeenshire. There's a castle called FEVA Castle, which is supposed to be a very haunted castle. So I go to the place, I go with a little bit of an idea. All the stories have something to do with writing within them. So the sort of idea I came away thinking about was, can an author ever really get the reader or the listener to think what they want them to think? Or is the power with the reader? So that was one of the ideas that I was playing with. And then the ghost story here is the Green Lady. And I think the only thing I need to tell you about the Green Lady that's not in the story is she dies, and as her husband remarries on the night of his wedding day, she hangs down outside of his window and she carves her name into the stone of the window ledge. Her name is upside down, so people say that she must have hung outside of the window to carve it into the window ledge. At the end, I'll tell you what the guide said about that. So this is, I'm going to read all of this. It's about 8 minutes. I hope that's okay. So this is the Green Lady. Are you listening? Yes, you, specifically you. Oh no, this isn't a story. I'm done with stories. This is direct address. Once you've read this, you won't be able to unread it. Once you've heard it, it can't be unheard. And you'll be implicated. Do you understand? Good. Oh, I can feel him already disagreeing with me from somewhere deep below my conscious control of his body. This lumbering body with its bald head and hairy skin, its sunken eyes and pale belly. Nothing like my beautiful body. I was curved in all the right places, soft and graceful. That's why that bastard wanted me. Yes, I know I was just a vessel. Well, now I've got a vessel of my own. And I can hear him saying, leave some ambiguity. Let them decide the meaning. Let them make the meaning. No, I'm done with that. I've had enough. 425 years of enough. The last thing I wrote was just 17 characters long. And where did that get me? 425 years of purgatory. 425 years of being forced to wander that infernal, dingy corridor with the grimacing faces of the tapestries and them looking down on me, my family. 425 years of watching, too exhausted to actually communicate. Well, now, that purgatory is over. I'm going to use more words, a lot more words, and I'm going to make it clear this time, clear to you. No ambiguity, no chance for misinterpretation, no wiggle room for you to twist my words for your own ends. Do you understand? Oh, I can feel your questions already. Your yes, but, your what does she mean? Why has she had 425 years of weary silence? Well, time for us is not like time for you, okay? When I hung over that window ledge and scratched my name into its stone, it wasn't like it was just one evening. Have you ever scratched deep grooves into sandstone with your own fingernails? No, I thought not. Well, it doesn't happen quickly. Yes, for you, well, for them, that bastard and his hussy, it was one night. But for me, each character I scratched was like a quarter of a century. Work it out, 17 characters, and yes, I am including the full stops. 25 years each. That's 425 years worth of work for me in one night. I was exhausted. 1601 to 2026. Do the maths. Oh, I can hear him under there again, struggling to get out, to take control of my limbs, but he's no match for me. Don't alienate your reader, I can hear him thinking. You need them on side if they're to take the meanings you want to. We'll see. After you've heard my story, well, I think that will be enough without me having to pamper you, to butter you up, to treat you like an infant. Oh, now I can hear your criticism again. You're thinking that I said it wasn't a story. What can I say? I'm fickle. You would be too if you'd had to endure what I'd endured. I had 5 children by that bastard. 5 bodies forced shitty and bloody into the world. 5 times to endure that pain. 5 times I faced my own death. But was that good enough for him? I had 5 girls. You know the answer already, don't you? In the end, he decided I was the problem. He needed an heir, a boy. He wanted to secure his position. And if I couldn't do that, somebody else would. Oh, I know my tone is sardonic, playfully bitter. Perhaps you've even smiled. But when he locked me in that room, that was no joke. When I watched my body thin, became pale, when my muscles began to tremble, when my fingers bled from scratching at the door, when my body was too weak to stand, yes, that was no joke. I use humour as a defence, but I'm trusting you. I'm trusting you to see the truth. I know that you will. He remarried shortly after my body had collapsed from exhaustion and my chest had stopped moving. His new wife, she was my cousin. She was 14. See, you're not smiling now, are you? What are you thinking? Are you thinking that my voice isn't convincing? That this isn't how a Tudor woman would speak? You've forgotten how many people I've watched tramp through my once great house as if it ever really was mine. I've listened to all the inane conversations, all the uneducated mutterings. I've chosen to take this voice for you in an attempt to connect. I need you to see. I need you to hear. So yes, I hung down from that window on the night they consummated their marriage, and I scratched my name into the stone. D. Lilius Drummond. I wanted to see their fear. I wanted them to know I was still there, that they couldn't get rid of me. I wanted my presence to horrify them, to torture them. I wanted them to feel my rage. But I've had to listen day by day by day to my story being massacred, my anger being erased. Do you know what the tour guides say? They say that I'm a benign spirit, that I mean no harm. They say I calm the other ghosts. They say that when I'm present, there's the sweet scent of roses, but they don't feel the thorns. They brought a medium in, a fraud. My words carved into that stone, my name, it's been taken as a blessing. This castle is full of portraits with halves of women with half smiles looking gentle and reserved, full of men looking authoritative and stern. They took my name intended for horror and they sanctified it. Until now. Until he came with his olive trousers, videoing my name in the stone, intending to write my story. They call me the Green Lady. Green as in naive, as in nurturing. But my green is malice. It's envy. It's poison. It's avarice. All I needed was that green, and I slipped into his mind. And now, here I am, writing to you in this green ink. Like I said, you're implicated now. I don't give my story for free. I need you to act. I need you to be my rage. I need you to set the record straight. Whatever you do, do not misinterpret my words. I've been direct with you. What change will you make for me?
Well, I can honestly say that yes, Dan's got some editing to do because he feels he has to edit it, but what a story. It's there.
Very good.
Yeah, I am open to feedback. If you're like, I didn't get that bit, tell me and I'll make it better. So yes, that's my last of my 15 stories.
That's brilliant.
You've got the rest to do yet?
I've got quite a few left to do. I think I've decided 50 is quite a lot, so I think I'm going to put 15 into a book, I think, and do 15 folklore finds, and then another 15, and then another 15. And so I can do it in chunks rather than try and do all 50 at once.
So what were the elements of truth in that?
So the story, the name chiselled into the rock, and the story is that she was hanging out outside. But yeah, the guides told me that she was a benign spirit. And I'd read before she smells of roses. And it just seemed to me that someone who was going to hang down and chisel their name into the stone was probably not that benign. And maybe the story had been altered slightly.
And was she locked away? Was all that true?
It's one of those things that might be true. There are varying things. But she did die. So she was there. She did die, and that's historical. He did remarry the cousin who was 14. She did have 5 children, all girls. So that's all true. I
liked how you handled her voice, like not being that of the time period.
Yeah, that was really
I was like,
that was great.
Yeah, I think I was like, this doesn't sound Tudor.
But if a ghost is hanging around, they're hearing modern conversations. So why would they? I like that.
I agree with that.
very good.
Well, if we take those as an extension then, you've all come up with examples so far. I mean, I suppose in my writing, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to create historical characters I know around and about. So technically, I'm creating a ghost of a person I've never met.
Yeah.
What do you think has to be an element in the story or stories that brings the reader to the point where they're actually frightened or on the edge of being frightened? And how far would you take that? Would you take it into the realms of horror, or would you stay with the normal genre that you're in?
I think we all of us are using real locations, aren't we? Which I think is what's really nice about having us together. Because I think there's something about what I find with, so I've got my ghost stories are all set in real locations in Cambridge, but equally my books, and I've got a fantasy series set in Cambridge called Cambridge Gothic, and again that's set in real locations, and I had to get permission to use those real locations because it's, we actually got quite a lot of information in there about what Cambridge University is actually like, and in fact the college it's set in uses it as an outreach book to schools that have never had a pupil go to Cambridge before. And they say read the series because you'll understand what student life is like. And the first 3 books, one's set in the first term, one's in the second term, one's in the third. So, and you performed at a May ball, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
So the last book finishes in a May ball at Cambridge at the end of the summer term. So I think what I think really helps is that you've got to have a feeling that, that could be here, or that could have happened here, or that feeling that when you walk down a street that something awful has happened in one of my books, quite a lot of my readers say they just check over their shoulder when they walk down that street because something really nasty happened in that. And the books are all have the title of all the books has shadows in it because Cambridge with its Gothic architecture is full of shadows. And I just love that idea about there's something in the shadows that's a bit unknown. And I think some of the really great films and the great sort of horror stories, you don't actually know what the monster is for a long time. In fact, they leave it to your imagination to imagine what it looks like because I think actually your imagination goes into really dark places, probably darker than many of us can write. And I think that's one of the nice things you've got in the story. So I think the really classic ghost stories and the really great thrillers set in a normal location or a known location, but there's just an off-key, there's just that off-key, particularly in that opening chapter, there's that off-key that just alerts the reader, it's not what I thought it would be, and it's not quite normal. And you almost want to create that feeling of disquiet in the reader when they sort of early on into the story, without revealing too much, just let them know it's just off.
I think for me and what you both do as well is combine an element of truth and real history with a bit of fiction as well, or your own imagination. This book's totally different. This is just facts, and I've tried to make the stories a bit more interesting without adding to them. That was difficult. But I was just telling these guys, I've just finished writing my first novel, which my publisher's reading, and it's set in Harrogate in the 1920s. And it centres around a real character from Harrogate who was a paranormal investigator in the 1940s called Cyril Thomas Oxley. And he had a paranormal investigation business. And so people would hire him and he'd go and do investigations all around Yorkshire. And then he wrote these investigations up and sold them as pamphlets. He'd go door to door with his daughter in a pram, selling these pamphlets. So I bought all of these pamphlets from antique shops because his daughter came on my ghost walk and said, "Have you heard of my dad?" I was like, "No." And so then I had this idea of him as being the central character. He starts off as a failing detective and then gets dragged into this kind of paranormal world. But there's loads of elements of truth. So Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Houdini came to Harrogate in 1921 and had a séance in the Harrogate Club, which is all true. So that's kind of part of my story as well. And that's what I love about the writings that we're all doing here, is that they all deal with an element of truth. And I think that's scary, where you can't tell, well, what's the author's imagination and what is the truth. So for me, that's what kind of a good ghost story, you can't see the line.
Yeah, I love that. So yes, that idea of can't see the line and the thing of being in the shadows. So I think for me, there's something about ghosts and ghost stories which is about being disruptive. And then coming back to this thing of, you know, the researcher or the, you know, the person working in it or the theologian, you know, who's sort of got the world sorted. And then this thing comes along which disrupts that sense of what normality is and blurs the line between our rational part of our brain and our unconscious. And to me, that's the place where the scariness is. It's in that psychological not knowing, or I guess that feeling of being disturbed yourself away from certain ways of thinking, or to question certain things that you might take to be normal and obvious and everyday. And I think that's one of the things I was trying to do in Bee's Witch as well. So that story is about a girl who's adopted, and she runs away from home and she encounters the ghost of England's most famous witch. Anyone want to guess who that is? But it's sort of about that story giving her a voice as an outsider, as someone who's been outside of our systems of normality and family. And so the ghost story, for me, can be like a good vehicle for articulating those things that are outside of our normality.
Yeah.
I
Sorry.
was going to say, and John, you said as well, how far do you take it? With scaring people as far as possible. So I didn't have to do that in this. You know, this, like I say, this is factual. So I think the novel's a better example. But there's a place called Calverley Hall. It's a National Trust property. Anyone been there? Oh, because did you stay over? Oh, is it? So it's one of the main locations in this book. It's towards the end. So Oxley solves this case in Harrogate and then sets up a detective agency in his first case through the Ghost Club of London, which is the real Ghost Club. Was M.R. James a...
Yeah, there was a Ghost Club at Trinity College.
Yes, there was, yes. They hire him to go investigate Calverley Hall, and it's now a National Trust property, and you can stay there. Unbeknown to me, my in-laws and my wife stayed there, like when she was younger. And so my in-laws read the first version of the book, and were like, oh my God, we've stayed there. And they could picture it all. And they said the attic was pretty spooky. And in my book, Oxley's daughter, who's assisting him, is listening to children running away further and further and deeper into the house and higher up. And as a sane person, you just wouldn't follow them. But you've got to force your characters to do the stuff you're afraid to do. And one of my first readers, my friend Thomas, rang me. He was like, he swore, like, why are you making me go up into this attic? Like, why would you even do that? And I was like, good, that's what I want you to think. And it gets pretty intense and scary because I think, you know, kids as ghosts are pretty terrifying. So I think you've just got to, you know, push your characters to do the things no sane person would do, and that's scary.
I totally agree. And then you really put them through it. You know,
yes.
I mean, you take them to something which is really horrible, and then you just go even further. That's the secret. It's just really. I mean, I'd hate to be one of my characters. But, you know, and I think children in particular, from an early age, when you look back to Grimm's fairy tales, they are grim. They've toned them down, haven't they, to make sure people don't know how grim they really are. But they were originally written to terrify children, and I think that's one of the things that we quite like, being a bit scared. In the safety of having a book, you can be quite scared. But then when you go to the physical location, unfortunately, your imagination starts, you know, running away with you, and you can really scare yourself in real life. So at St John's College, there's a building just in front of St John's College. Do any of you remember the film Halloween? Not Halloween, sorry. It was called Poltergeist.
Yes.
Poltergeist. It was like in the 1970s or early 80s. And this family go into this house, and the house is built on this graveyard that the developer cut corners on and didn't deconsecrate it, so the bodies are still underneath. Well, something similar happened at St John's College, because opposite the Great Gate of St John's College there's a street called St John's Street. Funny enough, it's called St John's Street until it gets to Trinity, And at Trinity College, it becomes Trinity Street. There are big rivals. Anyway, so St John's bit is called St John's Street. On the other side is this building, which was leased to the university for 100 years. And it was leased to them to become a divinity school. And it's now called the Old Divinity School, because after 100 years, it came back to St John's College. It's a beautiful, big, sort of mock Gothic building. And St John's College, when it came back, it's just before I became bursar, the previous bursar, they were trying to decide what to do with the building when it came back. And there were plans to turn it into a hotel or a guest house or a bar or whatever. In the end, they decided they were going to turn it into a lecture hall. You know, very imaginative Cambridge. Anyway, into a lecture hall. And so to kit it out with all the modern equipment you need for a lecture hall, they went into the basement and started digging underneath. And they discovered, first of all, they discovered a watercourse was running underneath that they didn't know had been plotted. And so every time they dug out the basement, it filled with water. And then as they dug a bit deeper, these skulls started appearing, floating in the water, like in that scene in Poltergeist. And in the end, they had to, whenever a skull appears in a dig in Cambridge, you have to stop because the archaeological unit are in there like rats up a drain pipe. You know? And they came in, sort of put the whole thing on hold for 5 months, and they excavated. In the end, they excavated 400 complete skeletons and the bones of another 400 invalids, because St John's College was built on the site of a medieval hospital. And no one had really marked out where the medieval hospital's graveyard was, and it's where the Victorians built the old divinity school. And so one of my ghost stories is actually based on that, because you can't not write a ghost story.
That's got a few ghost stories in there, a few hundred.
You can start from medieval time and work your way up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so much stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah, good. And the ghost club, so I think Victorians were very superstitious. I mean, I think Arthur Conan Doyle was a spiritualist.
He was, him and his wife Jean.
Yeah, and there's quite a few, and so this ghost club was formed, I think, in 1860 in Trinity College, and Dickens was in it.
Yep.
In fact, they do think that some of the ideas for Christmas Carol came from conversations at this ghost club. And the ghost club, once you became elected as a member of the ghost club, you remember for life and death. And they still meet to this day every All Hallows evening, you know, where the sort of the membrane between our world and the spiritual world is finished. They still meet. They have an annual meeting there each year, and all members, past and present, attend.
That's
brilliant.
What is it? Perpetual subscription rate?
It's hard to collect.
I'm going to throw a question over now. You asked earlier on, has anyone ever seen a ghost? Does anybody here actually believe in potential of ghosts, never having seen one? Gentle show of hands, please. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean.
The question I'm going to ask now is, if you met a person who said, I've seen such and such or experienced such and such, what would your first reaction be?
Well,
Write a book.
to write a book. No, so. Yeah, I was very lucky. So I put the local media really helped find loads of people, and it's surprising the type of person that came forward. You would maybe associate people who believe in ghosts to be a particular type of person, but it's everybody and anybody. Professors, mathematicians, doctors, dock workers, every single walk of life and job. So it's not a particular person. They're just in a particular place or environment, and they're not necessarily do they start believing. They don't believe in ghosts initially, and then something happens, and that happened to me. So I am one of these people who never believed in ghosts until I saw one, and you can read about that in this book. But always plugging the book. So I went to the Turkish baths so in Harrogate. They'd invited me to interview their staff. And nobody has ever written stories about the Turkish bath ghosts, only me. So I was intrigued, didn't have any preconceived ideas of what I was about to hear or what they were going to tell me. So it was really exciting. And hands up if you've been in, just so I don't over-explain. Okay, so you go through the modern reception area, and as you turn left, you go into the old ticket area, which is all kind of wooden and old Victorian. Everything's wood panelled, and then downstairs are these cheap change rooms. So they've got cloth curtains that you close, and the working class would get changed down there. But the upper class, so from Cambridge, you would go up this little staircase, and you would have a row of change rooms with wooden doors and locks. So the lady downstairs said, we'll go up this staircase and we'll do the interviews up there where we won't be disturbed. So I started walking up the stairs, and she's telling me about the history of the room up here, and that it's for rich people. And as I got to the top of the stairs, at the end cubicle, there was a woman leaning out and looking. And she was real as any of you are right now. She wasn't see-through, she was solid. She had white hair, she had a long white outfit on, almost all in one is what I remember. And then something around her sleeve, like a cuff or a ruff or something. And I saw her, she saw me, we made eye contact. And when we did, she ducked back in and closed the door. And I just went, what? And the manager said, are you all right? Yeah. And I just carried on walking and looking at each cubicle and counting the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I was walking down counting, she was saying, we keep all the doors of the cubicles open, traditionally, since we opened in the Victorian era, so that you know they're empty. And I got down to 12, cubicle 13, the door was shut, which is where I've seen the woman. And I was about to open the door, and she said, stop, what are you doing? I was like, there's somebody in there. And she went white as a sheet and said, have you just seen a woman? And I was like, shut up. I didn't say shut up, I swore. But then my skeptic mind kicked in. I was like, wait then, you could be making this up, I could be making this up. And she said, okay, what colour was her hair? After 3, 1, 2, 3, we both said white. I was like, okay, good guess. I was like, what was she wearing? And she said, was she sitting or standing? I was like, standing? Right, so after 3, we both said roughly the same thing. And she's like, open it, it's empty. And I opened it, and of course it was empty. And lots of profanities came out. I was laughing because I couldn't understand what had happened. I was tapping the panels on the wall looking for doors, or I was like, there's no mirrors. I was like, there was nothing could reflect. And she was laughing, going, have you never seen a ghost before? I was like, no, I haven't. She's like, well, you've just seen Ethel, our ghost. I was like, shut the front door. I sat down in a chair right next to the cubicle and said, oh yeah, so she either appears standing halfway in the cubicle, looking out. I was like, that's what I saw. Or she sat in the chair you're in. I was like, whoa, what? And she said, give me 2 minutes, I'll go and get someone to come up. I was like, don't leave me on my bloody own. Genuinely frightened. I was really frightened. I was like, this is... And what was frightening is I couldn't explain it. That's where the fear came from. It wasn't that, it was spooky, or, there was no atmosphere. She wasn't scary. It was just a woman. What was terrifying is I couldn't explain how I'd seen what I'd seen, and I still can't explain it. And then it got more incredible. Every person that came up was like, you've seen Ethel, and telling me all about her character and her personality and how she haunts different people in different ways. So it was absolutely kind of just solidified my belief in ghosts in that moment. But it didn't end there. So, I'd set up equipment to record and nothing happened. And then the final cleaning lady was with me, and we were talking, we'd finished, and I stood up to say thank you, and she pointed behind me, and the door of the cubicle shut. Yeah, and it'd been open the whole time, and I've just got goosebumps. and I went, oh my God, she's like, that's Ethel. And then she just went, shh, and we both went really quiet, and I swear on my children's lives, we both heard a woman's voice just go, ha ha, from that cubicle, and we packed ourselves. We ran out, it doesn't end, we ran down the stairs to get out, terrified but excited as well. And the manager was there with this young lady and said, Claire wants to talk to you about her experience upstairs. And I was like, well, something's just happened. She's like, well, let Claire speak first. So Claire said she was upstairs in that same area doing yoga a few weeks ago. And she said, I was tying my shoelace, sat just outside of cubicle 13, and the door closed. And then I just heard someone go, ha ha. And me and this staff member looked at each other. I was like, oh my God, that's just happened to us. So there was like this other confirmation. It was like, I imagine it was like to find God. You know, it was like I found this thing that I was like, I don't really understand. So if there's ghosts, then there must be heaven and there must be hell. I was just like, oh, it was mind-boggling. So yeah, I believe in ghosts.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so when people tell me their stories, you know, when I first started listening to people's stories, I was just like, yeah, this is great material. Genuinely just like, yeah, it wasn't disrespectful to them, but in my mind I was like, this is going to make a great book. But then when I experienced it myself, I was like, oh, now this just going to sound made up to sell my book, but this is what happened to me. And so I can feel like if someone has seen a ghost and they're not taken seriously, I can see why they would get really frustrated, because it's just something, it's weird, but very exciting. So
There's never been a cubicle 13, by the way.
Sorry?
There's never been a cubicle 13.
Oh, that's the twist.
Nobody called Claire has ever worked with.
I'll write that down in the next book.
It's tied to place, though, isn't it? Often, I think in researching the stuff about ghosts, the people from, say, the Ghost Club, and there's a society that collects all the various sightings and keeps a record of them. And there are different theories. Academics have been involved in the society, and they've sort of got different theories as to what ghosts are. And it tends to be related to a place. And the best they can come up with, you know, there's not a scientific explanation for it, but the closest they can get to is there is a lingering, what they call almost like an afterglow of a photograph of a person in that location. And what you see is the afterglow of a photograph of that person in that location. So it's tied to a location. So I think it must have a story located to that, that particular cubicle. And that's what I think most ghosts tend to be located in a physical location, and it's not that they follow someone around, but they tend to be stuck in.
Well, what I find interesting are trigger objects.
Okay.
So when I found out about this whole world of hauntiques, there's this other theory as well that scientifically we are made of energy. That's a fact, and there's this belief that your energy could be imprinted on places and objects. Which is why you get these haunted objects. And objects move. Objects move around. True. So, does the spirit then go with that object? And this is what I find fascinating when I use these objects in my shows. Because obviously I've got a background in magic and mentalism, so I can control certain things. But then stuff has happened where I have not been in control of it. And I always think, is that the object? Is that the ghost attached to it? Because you talked about artifacts and objects before, so
Absolutely.
It comes back to that thing of like disrupting the normal ways we like to think. We think of. So I also did some of my PhD around writing Beeswitch and thinking about some of the things that were in it and behind it, the way I was writing it. And one of the things that I looked at in that is time and different concepts of time. And obviously we have a very linear view of time, and that's the idea of ghosts or something being imprinted or an energy is quite disruptive to that linear view of time and progress.
Yes.
So for me, it comes back to that idea of the Gothic, the thing that we can't place, that we can't explain, is something that can disrupt our ways of packaging the world and understanding the world. And there are different ways, different cultures think of time in different ways. There are different ways of thinking about time. And I like that idea of layered. Time can be layered, or, different times might exist simultaneously in the same space. I think for me, it's just that sense of disrupting my normal ways of thinking. You know, the things that I've just nailed down as obvious. And these stories help me to challenge those things. I think I would be both a skeptic, and I think I do believe in stuff that is beyond our materialist views of the world. But for me, our psychology, spirituality and materiality are all weaved together. You know, in ways that I can't explain. So in that sense, I think ghosts are things that interest us to explore that and to ask questions about it.
Have you heard of the stone tape theory?
No.
So the BBC did a brilliant radio show about the stone tape theory. And I believe it comes from like Welsh folklore, because a lot of cottages are made of stone, and the same families can live in the same cottage for generations, and they can walk the same set of stones, and you imprint your energy on that. And so ghosts have been seen from ancestors kind of walking, and that's where the stone tape theory comes from. It's like pressing play on a tape recorder and you see the same thing happen over and over and over again.
There's a radio drama about it.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called.
And I found when I was, lots of people came forward with these stone tape theory hauntings in Harrogate, and they were all located where there was bodies of underground water. Obviously, you've got the springs everywhere. And my favourite story of a stone tape theory haunting was the Cedar Court Hotel. Beautiful hotel on the Stray, and this was back in like 2012 maybe. An electrician who'd had a contract there had been asked by the manager to go to the ballroom and fix some wiring, some dodgy wiring. And he said, I'll bring 2 lamps down that needs pat testing as well. So he went off to the ballroom, expecting the manager to follow shortly. And he opened the doors to the ballroom and froze and went bright red, because there was about 15 to 20 women in beautiful ball gowns stood or sat around tables, drinking tea and talking and chatting. And they kind of ignored him as he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought this room was empty," and closed the doors. And he turned round and the manager came walking towards him with a smile and 2 lamps and said, "What are you doing? This is the room." "Oh, well, I just opened it and there was loads of women. I think it's like a fancy dress party going on." The manager was confused, said, "No, hold these, it's empty." Opened the door and it was empty. The tables, chairs had all gone along with the ladies. And this electrician was absolutely beside himself with terror. And he'd worked there for years, so I've never seen this. And when he described it to the manager took him along what's called the spooky corridor, because it's haunted, where there's lots of photographs from the history of the hotel. And one of them captures high tea in the late 1900s, and it's all ladies in ball gowns sat in that ballroom around little tables. And this guy had never been down this corridor before. I mean, if you believe that. Who knows? He swears blind, he never did, and how could he account for knowing? But there's a few different examples of stone tape theory hauntings in the book. So, and that kind of feels like time travel. That's what people say it feels like.
I think there's a great story in Cambridge. So behind Trinity College, there's a college called Clare College, really beautiful college, and once considered the most beautiful building in England for a while. And in Clare College they had a master, and he was called Robert Greene. And Robert Greene, at the time of Sir Isaac Newton, had rival theories on physics. And he thought Newton was wrong, and he had his own theory. And obviously, eventually, everyone accepted Newton's theory, and Robert Greene basically was disgraced because his entire life's work was, undermined. And not long after that, he died. I think it sort of broke his heart, and he died. And in his will, he had a very large collection of books, which he was happy to donate to his college, even though he'd been disgraced. He was happy. He left in his will, happy to donate his books, which was a very valuable collection of books, plus £200. Which in those days was a very considerable sum of money, and on the condition that his body be dissected in the interests of science, and that the bones then be stored next to his collection of books in the library.
Wow.
And it was also stipulated that if the college did not agree to this, then the £200 donation would go to another college that was so anyway, so obviously the fellowship had a big decision to make because they weren't at all really interested in his bones, but they were very interested in the £200. So it took them so long to decide what to do. They eventually did decide they would accede to his request, but by then the body had been buried. And so they couldn't dissect it, so they got another body from the morgue and they dissected that and they put the bones in a cupboard just off the main library in Clare. And they sort of kept really quiet about it, they didn't want anyone to know, and they sort of kept the books and they kept the money. And then, as you know, students at Cambridge get up to all sorts of pranks. Gradually, the bones got less and less because one of the great sort of, finds was to find this skeleton and take a bone away. You talk about, ghosts being associated with artefacts. Well, there was no ghost sightings at all of Robert Greene until the last bone disappeared.
Brilliant.
And it was about a year after the last bone disappeared, they started seeing sightings of this figure walking through the corridors of Clare College, which they believed was Robert Greene looking for his bones.
That's great. That's so good.
Well, I think we ought to follow up with some more readings, gentlemen. So.
Do you want to go?
Go for it.
How long have we got?
You're okay.
We're good. All right, so I'll read a bit from Bee's Witch from the start. Chapter 1. It's been 7 weeks, 3 days and 5 hours since I was forced to leave the place I called home. Time feels like a rock in my belly. I wish. What do I wish? My hand's cold. I can't concentrate. I'm holding it in a pool of freezing water. The sign says it's a natural wishing well fed by magical waters. Make a wish within this well, it says. Give your hand, but never tell. There are rules. Use your right hand. Make your wish. Let the water dry naturally on your hand. Don't wish for money. Don't wish harm on others. And keep it secret. Stupid. The pool is carved into the side of a rocky passage, tucked behind a waterfall they call the Petrifying Well. It's damp in here, and I have to stoop, making my back ache. It's all part of a tourist attraction called Mother Shipton's Cave. There are woods stretching along the side of the river, hiding this pool, the waterfall, and the cave. Denise brought me here. I didn't want to come. They say Mother Shipton was a witch. Wish, witch, wish, witch. Wind blusters down the passage, making me shiver. Somewhere above, a jackdaw caws, its harsh cry echoing along the rock. I wish it would shut up. I can't think. What do I wish? It cries out again. It knows a storm is coming. Storm Alley. I heard it on the radio this morning. I imagine Prince Alley from the Disney film, but giant, made of swirling dark clouds looming over us, flicking a genie-like tail. I hate Disney. Think, Beatrice. What do you wish? I wish I could concentrate. My palms flat against the bottom of the pool. The rock is one smooth, cold and slimy. It feels weird to touch. Green light shines through the water, making my shadow look ghostly and misshapen, as if there's someone standing behind me. What's I doing? Usually I wouldn't pay any attention to this sort of thing. It's for kids, and I'm 11, nearly 12, not a kid anymore. But something made me want to put my hand in the water. I don't know what it was, a feeling in my belly. I was going to walk away, but I kept looking back, as if something was calling me, as if something almost whispered. Wish, 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 wish. Stupid. Wind whips mouldy leaves around my legs. They smell of decay. Drizzle has trickled under the edges of the sleeves of my coat. Summer's over. It's a new school year. a new school, a new home. I don't want to think about it. I wish. The cold stings my skin, but I push my hand down harder, holding it under the water. The light has changed now, blue. There are tourists chattering in the distance and the constant sound of dripping water. I wish. What is it you wish, wish, wish? I flinch. What was that? Is that Denise calling me again? She's always calling. I look round. No, there's nobody there. It's just the wind. The old iron lantern above me sways, creaking. I turn back, irritated, but despite feeling the whole thing is childish, my hand is still in the water. It's starting to go numb now. I'm about to pull it out when a Coke can clatters along the passage, making me jump. The ivy hanging from the rock flicks as if an invisible hand is brushing through it. The icy gust hits me and I close my eyes. What is it you wish, wish, wish? My eyes spring open. Who said that? There's nobody there. I'm alone. You have an overactive imagination. Everyone says so. I scrunch my eyes close. What is it I wish? What do I want? I feel the light in the pool change again. Red. The dark spots behind my eyelids pulse, and I watch a shape form. It's familiar, a figure I've pictured many times. I see the strands of her hair appear first, writhing, Medusa-like, a swirl of energy. The strands are tangled and chaotic. She's like a torch, a flame. I feel my heart lift, her energy pulsing through me. She's the only thing that lifts me this way, the only thing that makes sense. Below her twisting hair, I see her body. She sits still and rooted, cross-legged, as solid as a tree anchored deep in the earth. I feel her stillness, her safety. It surrounds me. I breathe it in. Mum? She holds her head in her hands, the sleeves of her jumper pulled over her fists. Her eyes are covered, her head turned down. I want to burn with her, to be lost in that stillness. I begin to reach out. Mum? Bee! My trance is broken and the fiery-haired woman vanishes. Cold stings my skin again. Bee? It's Denise. I spin round, pulling my hand from the wishing well, embarrassed. Denise smiles. She's watching me just along the passage. You're making a wish. Her smile is perfect, her teeth whitened. Even in this wind, her hair looks like something from a catalogue. She's wearing vintage Levi jeans, white pumps and a St. James top with red sailor stripes. She's trying to look younger than her age. She must be at least 50. She's trying to be my friend. I don't want a friend, and I certainly don't want a new mum. I move to wipe my hand dry on my jeans. Oh, don't dry it, Denise interrupts. Haven't you read the sign? You have to let it dry naturally, otherwise your wish won't come true. What does she think I am, 5? I shrug and move to wipe my hand anyway. But as I do, I realise it's clenched. There's something in my fist, something small and hard. I release my grip and look down. In the centre of my palm is a shiny £1 coin. I glance round. I must have taken it from the well. I didn't take it. Come on, Denise says. I want to show you something. I stare at the coin again, and something icy brushes the back of my hand, the ivy above swaying. My treasure.
Sorry?
You go next, I'm going to find.
Oh, right. Well,
You're going to do your bell.
I was going to do the bell, yeah. So it's different storytelling. So these are two very similar objects. They produce the same thing. So they're both spirit bells. And so they're both being used in a very traditional way, in like a 1900s Victorian seance setting. This would be very handmade. So in Yorkshire, in the kind of working class towns. They really kind of fell in love with spiritualism when it came over in the 1900s from America. And they invented loads of different ways of communicating with the dead. One of them is a spirit bell. But they couldn't afford brass bells or... so they made them. So this is a stick with a bit of cotton. So this is exactly what they would have used. And their best wine glass. This one very big and heavy, which is perfect for what we need it to do. So in a seance room, you would have your family. So in the 1900s, it's the most popular form of entertainment. And your family and friends would come around and you'd just talk to the dead. How nice is that? Better than Netflix. And they had all various different ways of communicating with the dead, and this was just one of them. So you would be in a darkened room. This would be held in the middle of the circle with everybody sat around. And you would ask questions of the spirit. And hopefully the spirit would ring the bell like this. Let me just do it again. Okay, so that's what our intention is in this seance. So we're in a darkened room, so imagine that. And we would say, spirits, come forward from the darkness towards my voice and into the circle. If there is anybody here, could you please ring the bell? Now what you're seeing here is a natural occurrence. So even though you think, you're standing still, your body's always moving. This is how pendulums work. Pendulums don't move on their own. They're not powered by ghosts. So this is wobbling naturally. So let me just try and stop it. Spirits, if you are here, could you please ring the bell? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
No, I didn't touch the glass. This hand's still. That definitely came from the glass, yes? I'll come closer so you can verify as an independent witness. There's nothing touching it. I'll put this hand here so I'm not touching anything. Spirits, if you are here, could you please ring the bell? And that was enough to convince the Victorians that the dead were speaking. Let me explain what's happening. Yeah. Right? So there is a method. This is a traditional Victorian clairvoyant method that they would, they take these around to the houses and perform for money. And that's what they're doing, they're performing. So what is happening? Science. Has anyone figured it out?
Squeeze?
No, not squeezing, but very close. So all I'm doing is turning this bit of wood, okay? So there's tension here, and it works like a guitar string. Listen, okay? So all your attention is here. So this is the misdirection. This is where the magic comes in. So I'm even bringing it close to you, and you leaned in. And man, you know me. You shouldn't. I'm telling you. So, and the clairvoyants would do the same thing. They'd say, concentrate and focus your energy on the glass. Focus here. Don't look here where the magic's happening. And it's so minute. The turning of the wood is minute. So this thread is just kind of like a hangman's noose around a little niche, bevel, cut in the wood. So the stick turns, rotates. So if I just turn the stick quite obviously now, it's just enough for the tension. So the string moves up, and then the tension's too much and it drops down. That's where you get the ringing sound. So if you look really closely here, you'll actually see the string move. Did you see it? Yeah, if you get close enough. So that was enough to convince the Victorians that the dead would speak. And probably some of you before I showed you the method. And that's just something I made. And that's something that they made themselves and convinced people to part with their money. And I loved what you were saying earlier, Dan, about disrupting our normal way of thinking. So that I've just shown you how this works. So that is something I made. based on, I've done a lot of research into Victorian seances and technique. This is a school bell, and this is one of my hauntiques. So this is from a school in Middlesbrough, and it's not old, it's from kind of the 40s, mid-40s, 1945, and it belonged to a schoolmistress who hung herself. Not from this rope, that'd be sick. Not that dark. No, this is my rope, but this was her bell, and that's the school bell she would ring. And it came into my possession when the museum closed, and they were selling lots off. And a friend of mine called Jake, who worked there, said, "Oh, there's a bell you need to buy. It's supposedly haunted." And this is it. So I need a couple of volunteers to help me out. But you moved as if you were going to help. You're right here, yeah? Thank you. So if you could stand up here. And my friend, could you stand up here? Perfect. What are your names?
Joel.
Joel.
Leighton.
Leighton. Joel and Leighton. So this is set up as, oh, just come relax a bit. There you go. Perfect. Just needs a little bit of looseness on the rope. So this is set up in a traditional Victorian seance setting. Again, everyone would be sat around in a circle. You guys would be in the middle with possibly a table beneath you. And then when you were told, you would lift the bell off the table. So you've done that. And what we're going to do in a moment is you're going to ring the bell. And you're going to see how two living people ring the bell. What will happen is you'll move the rope and the bell won't ring. And you'll figure out that you have to almost work against each other. And the bell will go crazy. And it'll ring. All right? And this is what it looks like when two living people ring the bell. Go for it. Okay, so a lot of movement. Keep going. Yeah, so there's a lot of movement from the rope. You're kind of pulling like this. You're doing less. And then you're forcing it to ring and the bell's moving a lot. So let's just stop that. Now, the clairvoyant right now is stopping the bell. But what they're secretly doing is sticking a piece of candle wax to the clanger that hangs down. And attached to that would be some black thread, cotton, just like I used on the bell. Black cotton was widely used in seances to make objects move, bells ring, etc. But because I'm a magician, I have something called an invisible thread. It's like a hair. There we go. You just won't be able to see it. It's not very long. There we go. You can make them longer and stand further away. And all you can do, this is what the Victorians would have done. They would have pulled the string to make the bell ring. But I'm just demonstrating what a fake clairvoyant would have done. All right? So that's what they would have done. I don't know you. Would you mind feeling my clanger and the bell? The bell? And just check there's nothing stuck to it. Yeah? No, get in there. Have a look at it. I'm going to do this. If I was attached to that bell, the string would have snapped. Okay? And I'm going to move all the way back here, so I'm not even anywhere near it. And you were talking about disrupting disrupting things in storytelling. So you've seen how science works in ringing the glass. And this is another way that we can communicate with the spirits without any of that. So, guys, I want you to concentrate on the bell. Do not move. And if you feel anything unusual, a change in temperature, maybe somebody tapping you on the shoulder, pulling your hair, you've got to let me know. But spirits, I'm going to ask you to come forward now from the darkness towards this bell. And if there is anybody here, could you please make it ring? There's some movement, but I think that's you naturally. So spirits, if there is anybody here, could you come forward from the darkness and into the light? Thank you. Now, that definitely wasn't either of you, was it? You can tell by your stunned faces. And I'm all the way back here. That certainly wasn't me. That must have been the spirits. Give these guys a round of applause. Very good. You can check the bell. It's just a bell. There is no string. So there are just two demonstrations. I'm not telling you how to do that one. Yeah, just two demonstrations of how the Victorians would have scared people. You know, people were absolutely terrified. And we talked before about Doyle and his wife Jean. Yeah, they were clairvoyants all of a sudden. Jean's trick she would go into a trance and write spirit letters. So she would write letters to loved ones. And Doyle and Houdini were best friends. Very unusual relationship because Houdini thought it was all a load of rubbish and Doyle believed. So they'd have arguments all the time. And before they came to Harrogate, Houdini booked tickets for him and Doyle to see two clairvoyants in like Sheffield or somewhere, in a music hall. But Houdini knew that these two clairvoyants were the Davenport twins. So there were two carnival folk from New York. And halfway during the show, Houdini stood up and said, "These guys are frauds," and started to tell them how the tricks were being done. Bouncers dragged Doyle and Houdini into the alleyway where the twins, they weren't even twins, just friends, were waiting. They had fisticuffs. And a reporter walked past and drew a picture of the fight, and it was in the paper the next day. And so the Harrogate Club, where they were invited the next night for a séance, wired a telegram to Doyle saying, "You can come, but we don't want Houdini. We don't want any trouble." So there's a wonderful photograph. If you come on the Ghost Walk, and there's a flyer on your seat. If you bring that on the Ghost Walk, you can have it for half price. So do that. And where we start, there's a wonderful picture of Doyle in that position where he had his tour. And then he went to the Harrogate Club on the night for a séance and brought a friend who didn't speak, kept to the shadows. He was male. And he signed the guest book with a cross, and Doyle actually signed his signature, which you can still see. I think it was Houdini, but there's no record of him being there. And the next day, they both went to Cottonley to see the Cottonley Fairies. If you've never heard of that, Google it, but I've got photographs at the back of the Cottonley Fairies as well you can have a look at. I think, those are all stories, aren't they? Beautiful, great stories. A great story about Doyle and Houdini. And I like to embellish them with performance as well. That's kind of a little thing I do, because I couldn't compete with your writing with these first-hand accounts. That's all I have for you right now. So thank you very much.
Are magicians supposed to keep the tricks of their trade completely secret, or is this well documented how they did it? Is that
it's not that you can dig. You have to do a bit of digging and know where to look. That's why I didn't share that second one, because that's my thing. Yeah. The first one's really old, and it's like if a book's out of print for so long, you can do what you want with it. It's the same with those kinds of effects from the Victorian era. If you start looking into it, you find loads of amazing things that they did. Hollowed out heels in their shoes with an elastic band and a cork, and you just get one wrap, a spirit wrap, but all you would do is just lift your foot up to loosen the elastic band, which would snap the cork onto the floor and cause a spirit wrap. That's what they called it. So there's loads of great techniques.
You're playing on people's a lot of people do want to believe that, don't they?
Oh yes,
so
they do.
In a sense, you're sort of giving them the excuse to believe, in a sense.
Yeah. And I start all my performances off, the seances, saying, I don't talk to the dead, I'm not a clairvoyant, and what you see is purely for entertainment purposes. But I still get people coming up asking, could you get me a message from my mum? Or I'm like, no, I've just told you it's all fake. So don't go to clairvoyance. Come and pay me and I'll just tell you the same rubbish.
In my main fantasy series, one of the themes I have about that is knowledge of something that, as you say, is a bit out of the ordinary, and not understanding why it is like that. So I could talk about the M word at Cambridge, because the M word is magic. Okay, because if you can't explain something, it's magic. And of course, for the scientific sort of method, you can't accept that. There has to be a reason why things are the way they are. And so it's one of the things that I use in my main fantasy series, this idea that there is magic, in the sense that there are things happening, that there might be a scientific reason for it, but no one yet has worked out what it is. And because of that, you can't publish anything about it, because you've got to be able to publish something that has been proven. It has to have a theory that's provable. And I think that's why Einstein was such an amazing character, because he was putting stuff out there that at the time you could not prove, but it was eventually proven. And I suspect in some medieval times that's what magic was. The old healers, operating, which were the witches, in a sense, were healers, weren't they? And they were accused of, performing magic, because no one could scientifically explain why washing your hands meant fewer people died, and that sort of thing. So it's a sort of like a theme that I use quite a lot, which is the M word. And of course the great thing is that if you're writing books set in a place like Cambridge, if you pretend it's real, some so-and-so is going to be able to prove that it's not. I'm quite happy to use magic and what I've been able to do is use Cambridge as a setting for most of my stories, because academics say, as soon as they hear it's a fantasy series, that's fine. We don't have to worry about it. If I was pretending it was real, I'd be getting, the world and his wife sort of coming in and like dumping on my work. So the great thing about it is it's a great get out of jail card. But what it allows me to do, because it's a fantasy series, it allows me to poke underneath the real skin of Cambridge. Because to some extent, to have access to, all, let's say on the main fantasy series, everything is set in St John's College. All the locations are real. And actually, on my website, if you go to my website, I've got a maps page which has a map of St John's College with things you can press on. And when I was bursar there, we agreed to let Google Maps do a street view of the college. Cool. And so you can press on this thing and you can step inside the chapel as it actually is. So when you're reading the book, you can actually look around at what they're seeing in the chapel because it's actually a street view. So by sort of claiming it's almost like a magical book, no one takes it seriously in Cambridge, at least none of the academics do, but it does allow me to show you lot what Cambridge is really like. And the second reading I was going to go to is something that was a bit cheeky. It's called A Late Arrival. One of the most terrifying things you can experience at Cambridge, and most people have had this moment of absolute terror, is your interview. So coming up to Cambridge for your admissions interview is a terrifying experience. And the way it worked when I was applying was that you would only have one interview. Nowadays you have at least two. So what they do now is they have a meeting with your tutor, and your tutor is an academic who is not in your subject. So I was applying to study law, and my tutor was going to be a historian. And the idea here is that the tutor is there to look after your well-being. So he doesn't really want to know anything about your subject. He wants to just know about you as a person. So your first interview at Cambridge will typically be with your tutor, where he will basically calm you down. That's the role of the tutor interview, just to get you talking, feel relaxed, try and sort of put you at ease. Because the next interview you have will be with your academic supervisor. And that's normally two of them. One will ask a question and the other will listen, and then the other person will ask the question and so forth. And that is quite challenging, let's be honest, and so I think that's why people get so terrified. And I thought it'd be quite fun to actually write a story about an interview, because they are terrifying, and I thought it'd be nice to do a ghost story set in an interview. But I also thought I'd sneak it past some of the fellows at college, because there is a legendary club at St John's College called the Book Club. And the Book Club is attended by 8 fellows. And these 8 fellows are the oldest fellows in college. Okay, they are the dreadnoughts of the college. They are the ones who've been there all the way through, and they know everything in the college that has gone on, and they know everybody, whether it be the bedders or the catering staff, the fellows, the junior academics. They know all the current students. They know everything. And they need a place where they can just let off steam about all the idiots in college, and it's called the Book Club. And the tradition is that they meet in the Fellows' special dining room, which has only got places for 8 people, and they meet once a term, and someone recommends a book for the book club. And they normally choose one of the most boring books they know of, okay? And everybody has to go to Heffer's, which is the main university bookshop, buy the book, and attend the book club, and no one ever reads it. They literally come in and they put the book down, and they basically then have a good old chin wag about all the idiotic stuff that's going on at college. So my second story in the sort of collection is called A Late Arrival, and it's actually, you talk about time and sort of time being displaced. This has actually got 2 time periods. It's got the present day, and it's got what happened in the past. And the thing that happened in the past is an interview, and what's happened in the present day is someone going to the book club. So that's how I sort of get 2 bits of college lore into a ghost story. So I just read the introduction to this. Professor William King peered through the frosted window of his rooms in Third Court as the snow swirled around outside. Somewhere opposite stood the old library, but it was impossible to make it out through the blizzard. "Bugger," he grumbled, glancing down at the thick hardback book on the side table by the door, the reason he would have to venture out on such a night. For almost 2 decades, William had been a member of the book club, an august group of retired fellows who met once a term to consider a book chosen by one of the company. That at least was the official reason for the club's existence. Its true raison d'etre was to allow old friends to gather in the Wilberforce room and talk late into the night over college affairs, past and present, fortified, of course, by the best that the college kitchens and fellows' wine cellar could offer. To become a book club member was considered a singular honour, an acknowledgement of years of devoted service, accumulated wisdom, and a treasure trove of stories best shared in a private over a decanter of college port. Indeed, its social standing was such that, once admitted to its ranks, only earthquake, flood, or an untimely death could be considered a valid excuse for non-attendance. So while the prospect of stepping out into the snowstorm that evening held little appeal, William knew he had no choice but to make the attempt. "Not had a storm like this one for quite a while," he thought, trying to recall the last time it had been as bad as this. His mind drifted back over half a century to that December in 1963, when one of the worst winters on record had swept across the fens from Siberia. In those days, he had been a tutor in the throes of the admissions round and had been running late. Entering the Great Gate Porter's Lodge, William was greeted by the imposing figure of Tim Small, the head porter. "Evening, Dr. King," boomed the former guardsman. "A bit wintry out there." "Perishing," said William, rubbing his hands together and enjoying the warmth of the coal fire glowing in the grate. "All sorts of problems on the road," continued the porter. "It's playing havoc with the interviews." "I'm not surprised. Still, Professor Marley and I are almost done. Just one more tonight. A Sam Barraclough." "I've not seen anyone of that name, though he might have arrived via the Cripps Lodge." "Well, I'll head over to my room now. If you see the boys, send him round to Second Court, would you?" "Right you are, Dr. King. M staircase, isn't it? Above the Wilberforce room?" "That's the one. Thanks." William left the lodge and was greeted by a bitter east wind, which stung his cheeks and made his eyes water. By the time he reached Second Court, he could barely see. It wasn't until William approached the entrance to his staircase that he noticed the 2 figures waiting for him in the shelter of the archway. One he recognised, the short, stocky figure of Professor Marley, Director of Studies in Law, hunched in a thick tweed jacket. His companion was a tall, gangly youth, looking frozen in an ill-fitting suit, his hands stuffed into its flapping trouser pockets. "Forgive me, gentlemen," William said. "I hadn't realised you were here already." "Just arrived, Bill," replied Marley, nodding to the younger man. "This is Mr. Barraclough. We bumped into each other on the way here." "Sam, isn't it?" asked William. The boy nodded, keeping his hands firmly in his pockets. William couldn't blame him with this weather. He must be freezing. "Glad you could make it, Sam. Travelled far?" "Yorkshire," said the boy, his accent unmistakable. "You did well then," said William. "The roads must have been hell." "You're not wrong," said Barraclough. It's funny actually, when I turned up for my interview, we had, as I said, my tutor, a history chap called Peter Linnan, who used to run a ghost tour of the college.
Oh, cool.
And he used to sort of take people around and tell fanciful stories about ghosts. And I remember coming up the stairs, with a name like Wells, I was pretty much last on the interview list, always at the bottom of the list. So it was like 7 o'clock at night, and I remember turning up at his room in Second Court, and he was waiting for me at the top of the stairs. So I sort of go up this wooden, panelled staircase up to his room, and he's standing on the door, and he looked pretty shattered, to be fair. And he sort of looked at me over his he had these half-moon glasses. He looked down and he said, "Wells?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Yes." Right. Well, I won't lie. We're a bit tired. Do you fancy a glass of sherry? And of course, I thought, what the hell do I do? Is this part of the interview? You know, anyway, I declined the sherry, and I went in there, and my director of studies was there, and he was like a rat-like chap called Dr. Malcolm Clark with a really evil-looking face. He was a lovely chap. He looked really nasty. I was absolutely terrified, and I sort of like bluffed my way through the interview, and sort of came out at the end of it. And after that, obviously I managed to get in, but he always called me after that. My tutor always called me, "You idiot Wells." So, I mean, I don't know why, was I an idiot because they let me in for some reason, but was it because I turned down the sherry? I didn't know. Anyway, he was still there when I went back to like 30 years later as a fellow. I went back to college as a fellow many years later, and Peter was still there, my old tutor. And I could tell that he'd mellowed over the years because he still called me Wells. He didn't call me by my first name, just Wells. He just dropped it, "You idiot."
Well, I think, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a great evening so far. Are you prepared to take any questions, chaps? Any questions from the floor? Or you want to rush up to the pub?
I just wondered, Dan, because of your time and your displacement, etc., whether or not, obviously, being from Bradford, that there J.B. Priestley, for example, who obviously did lots of that, and not just in Inspector Calls, but obviously in lots of other stuff as well, because he believed in that theory, like, I have been here before.
Yeah.
Story. Whether when you were doing your PhD and stuff like that, did you read any of it?
No, but I need to. I read.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Because there are ghosts
Yeah.
in so much of what he writes.
Right. Yeah.
I actually adapted one of his short stories for stage. Tom Priestley gave me, because I'm a J.B. Priestley Society member. Uncle Phil on TV, which is a great one. It's 1953. It's a TV. He dies, but he keeps turning up on TV to tell them exactly he heard everything what they said about him. And it's brilliant. It's so comedic. I just wondered if you had.
You have to email me. That's good.
Is there anything else?
I'm just interested, the answer may be 3 no's. Have any of you actually had your works performed by somebody else?
I've written plays that have been performed on stage. Yeah.
Yeah, mine's used in a summer school. Come out to play. It's used in a summer school for international students, and so it's performed for them every year, which is quite fun. And I do. Because I can't attend them all, because they're sort of like in Cambridge. Cambridge is overrun the summer by summer courses, and I can't attend them all. So they've actually videoed me doing the introduction to it. So apparently I appear regularly throughout the summer, although I'm not normally in Cambridge. So, yeah.
My first book I adapted into a play, so that was So
It's just your response to seeing your work being sort of, in a sense, you losing control of your work and seeing your response to how others see it.
So I wrote a radio show called The Dead Speak, and it was adapted for BBC Radio 4. So it was my story, but they kind of tweaked little bits, which was it improved it definitely. But the whole premise was it was a live radio broadcast from a haunted location in Durham, which is where I'm from. So it was a real location, the stories were all real, and it went out as if it was interviewing real staff members who worked there. So, there was the pot washer, so you could hear them clinking glasses and talking, as if it was all real live interviews. But then stuff started to happen in the live broadcast, because it went out on the radio as if it was, we're going live now to this place, and then white noise. Have you heard of white noise? Yeah, so white noise started to come through, and voices, and suddenly you were hearing stuff from the past, and people were ringing in to the show saying, "Oh, we've heard this," and so that was brilliant, because it took my idea to a whole new level, having it performed or going out on Radio 4. It just elevated the whole idea. So that was really exciting. And I was there for the recording of it, so it was really interesting to see how they did all the sound effects, and yeah, it was brilliant. Very cool.
That was exciting.
Yeah.
They had all my books had audiobooks made of them, and the production company, they basically have an editor and a director plus a voice actor to do the voices, and the voice actor I chose with them was a chap called Kieran Sword. It's actually spelled S-A-W-A-R-D, but it's much more fun to say Sword, which is how it likes to be called. And Kieran's a brilliant narrator. He's won sort of some of the narrator Oscars. He's a very good audiobook narrator. And hearing someone else perform your words, he didn't even change the words. There's no changing to the words at all. Just exactly the same words and exactly the same scenes. I heard my book in a completely different way when he delivered the lines of my characters. It's something about the way he got into the head of the characters. I was just absolutely mesmerised by it. And it made me realise, when readers read your book, they read it with a completely different voice, and they read it with their experience. So it's that sort of thing, is that they will read something and get meaning from something that you might have thought was just a filler line, but it can make quite a profound impact on somebody because of their lived experience.
Yeah. And when we adapted my first book, I worked with a different playwright because I felt I wouldn't be able to make it into a play. I wasn't detached enough. So that was really interesting to learn, because obviously plays are very different to books. So it was about like condensing it and finding what the through line was going to be for the play, and the fact that then became quite a different thing to the book. So that was a really interesting experience.
I found with things that I've written, people performed, you hear words, and I wouldn't quite say it like that. But because it's no longer your control, you give it to the actors, and the actors take it away. And for me, the best part is to watch it come to life. And I think, okay, I wouldn't have said, it's their play now, it's not mine.
Yeah, so true.
Right then, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say again, thank you to these three gentlemen here, coming all the way from wherever.